So my friend, you have done the hard work of thinking about a product you want to get made. You've even gone so far as to design it. Maybe you even have a prototype or two, and you're talking with a factory and they're like, dude, you gotta order 500 of these. You gotta order 1,000 of these. You gotta order 5,000 before we're even willing to work with you. And not only that, but you gotta get these things put together. There's a whole manufacturing process. You gotta ship them overseas. It's a lot of money to get started. What about even the tooling costs, right? For your product. And a lot of first-time entrepreneurs in the e-commerce realm are like, how do I finance this? How do I pay for this? How do I make it so that this is actually gonna become a business if I don't have very many funds? So that's what I want to answer in today's video is how do you finance the minimum order quantity for a new e-commerce product that you've created? My name is Salvador Briggman, and that is what we are covering today. Okay. So first of all, this is a very common problem, right? So many entrepreneurs before you have dealt with this issue, particularly if they've created their own product, and they've had to navigate the waters and figure out the solutions to some of these problems. And honestly, for my years in business, I've been in the crowdfunding industry for 8 years now, since 2012. And what I've realized has sort of been the difference between people that are successful with products like the nomadic bag, right? And other ones that aren't as successful. It's really their ability to solve problems and to navigate this whole e-commerce realm. So today I want to talk about what are some of the ways that you can finance this minimum order quantity purchase, so that way you can actually push ahead, full steam ahead. You can get this thing out there to people. You can start selling it online. You can build the business of your dreams, create freedom, have people that are working for you, be your own boss, all these kind of things that I know you want. And most importantly, one of my favorite sayings, make a dent in the universe. Okay, so let's get down right to this. The first way, and probably the most common way I'd say, is to use your own savings in order to finance the minimum order quantity or the minimum inventory purchase. So you've already been talking with a factory or a manufacturer, and they're like, this is what the minimum order quantity is going to be, this is what the price is going to be. You need to make this inventory investment, get all the inventory shipped overseas to your warehouse or to your fulfillment company. We recommend Fulfillment, one of the sponsors of my YouTube video, or you're going to maybe do it in another country or something like that. You have to then figure out, okay, how are we gonna pay for that, right? All of this inventory that we're gonna then ship and then ship out to all of these customers. The first way is to draw on your savings. Now, you could actually have this amount of money saved to make the minimum order quantity purchase. A lot of people do not. So what they might do is they might cash out their 401k or their Roth IRA or other sort of investment vehicles that they've built up over time working for an employer in the past. So they might draw on that with certain penalties. I'm not going to get into that too much because I think that's kind of like in the legal side of things, but they could draw on their existing retirement investments or other investments with the rationale that if they're able to create a successful company, it's going to far outpace any kind of 7% to 8%, maybe 10% return that their investment portfolio would get over time. It's going to be a lot bigger of, if you're swinging, you're stepping up to the plate, it's going to be a lot more of a home run, right? Whereas like investing for retirement is more of like a first base, and then slowly it builds over time. So they will draw on their own savings or their own investment portfolio in order to finance the minimum order quantity. That is the first way. The second way is to get investors for your company. So you might approach a family member or a friend or have a partner, right? And decide, okay, we're gonna bring these people into the company in some way, maybe just as advisors, or maybe if it's a partner, he can also lend some of his skills and expertise to building out this operation. A lot of e-commerce companies nowadays are built through partnerships, right? So maybe they are drawing on their savings to be able to invest in the company, or they're drawing on their retirement account in order to help you finance that initial inventory and the tooling costs. So you could gather investors, these are called angel investors, right, in order to finance that minimum order quantity purchase. So these might be small angels who are using something like a convertible loan of some kind, or they're doing preferred stock in your company, or they could be really nice and just give you the money, but I really doubt that would be the case. We don't see too many GoFundMe campaigns that are hitting like the 50K mark, more like $1,000 to $5,000. So you could use angel investment as one way to finance that minimum order quantity in something that's kind of like a Regulation D offering, or something that's just small to friends and family, and they become a shareholder in your C corporation, or they become a member in the LLC that you have set up. The third way is to use a newer form of financing, which is something called equity crowdfunding. So equity crowdfunding is basically where you can do a regulation crowdfunding campaign, and recently the rules were raised, so you can do upwards of $5 million under regulation crowdfunding and use a company like WeFunder, a platform like WeFunder, Start Engine, Seed Invest, one of these guys to host an equity crowdfunding campaign for your particular product. I've covered these types of campaigns on my podcast, the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. We've had people who have raised 100K, 50K to create new shoe brands, etc. But usually there's a little bit of a track record to the company before you go to equity crowdfunding, but not necessarily, right? So if you want to basically offer this investment opportunity to your friends and family or to a partner, but also to the general public as well, in the same way you might do like an IPO, you could technically do that under an equity crowdfunding campaign. And I've also written the book Equity Crowdfunding Explained, which shares with you how to do that. The next way would be through debt, right? And debt is always kind of like a scary word. I hate taking on debt. I think it's something that really just limits your freedom, right? But when it comes to business, debt can be used much more constructively in order to build an asset over time. And the same thing with real estate, right? You can use debt to grow a business or a portfolio of real estate properties. So when it comes to e-commerce, you could also take on debt as a company or as an individual in order to finance the tooling costs or the minimum order quantity, which is required to get your product out there into the marketplace. Now, you could obviously go the traditional loan route, approaching a bank of some kind or one that specializes in e-commerce. More often than not, a lot of small-time creators and entrepreneurs will actually just use credit cards, right? So they'll use credit cards to finance the minimum order quantity purchase. Then they will start selling that and they will use the sales and revenue in order to pay off their credit card. Or they could approach a small individual angel investor who's basically lending them the money in order to purchase the minimum order quantity for this particular product. So you could go the debt route. That is another way in which you could go. There are a lot of different companies out there now like Prosper and Lending Club where you can also secure personal loans very easily doing that online. So that is another route that you can go. Now, one of the things you'll probably notice at this point in the video is that there are pros and cons, there are drawbacks and there are pluses about all of these different techniques and ways of financing this minimum order quantity. Now, in my studying of this field, there's one way that I've come across that's, to me, literally the best way for any entrepreneur to go down, and particularly if you want to accomplish other things as well. So you don't just want to get the money to finance the minimum order quantity, but you also want customers. You also want media attention. You also want worldwide acclaim. You want social media growth. You want followers and fans of your Instagram or your Facebook. You want to build an email list of people that are maybe excited about your products coming out and a customer list, right? This way that I'm about to share with you kind of checks off all of these boxes, and there are some drawbacks as well. So the next way that I'm going to just talk about is using what's called crowdfunding, right? So when I think of crowdfunding, usually I think of GoFundMe, right? I'm not talking about GoFundMe. I'm talking about Kickstarter or Indiegogo. Now, Kickstarter was founded a while ago. I got started in this industry back in 2012. I think it was founded around 2009, 2010, thereabouts. But it started to become really big in 2012 with the launch of the Pebble watch, $1 million campaign, Coolest Cooler came after that. A lot of really big, successful e-commerce raises on Kickstarter. What happens after Kickstarter is always a whole nother matter. But what this platform is designed for is for a person like you who doesn't have very much know-how and who just has the product and maybe a prototype and able to take high-resolution photos and videos of that. You can actually raise money on Kickstarter today for this product. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, basically, if you launch a Kickstarter campaign, everyone who supports it is effectively pre-ordering the product. That's right. It's not like Amazon where people buy it and then you ship it out the product in 2 days, right? Or in 3 days, and they get it to their doorstep and they're really excited. They open the packaging and they use it and they're like, this is amazing, right? That's not really how it works. With Kickstarter, people will pre-order your product using the Kickstarter platform. You're running a campaign, usually for about 30 days, could be 45 days, could be 60 days at most. And throughout this duration, people are allowed to pre-order the product. And when they do, your funding meter begins to go up and up and up. And your funding meter is just kind of the revenue that thus far that the product has generated. So you see these campaigns that have done $1 million on Kickstarter, they basically generated $1 million in sales in a 30-day period or in a 60-day period. And while the campaign is open, people can actually support it and they can buy it. And and it can also look at some of the other packages that you might have available on Kickstarter. Now, when you do this, you also then have to promote, you have to market it, you have to work with coaches like myself in order to help you with the strategy behind it, all these kind of things. But the great thing is that you don't have to ship out the product for 3 months, 2 months, 6 months. I've seen Kickstarter campaigns that don't deliver on their rewards for a year, right? It really depends on you as the entrepreneur, as the innovator, as the creative person, when you are going to set your delivery date and what the timeline is going to be like for that. So when it comes to Kickstarter, the biggest difference between this and Amazon or Shopify or e-commerce is the fact that there is a delay. And throughout that delay, you can then take, let's just say you've raised $200,000 in revenue, right? In sales revenue from doing that Kickstarter campaign. You can take that money and you can pre-order, you can order all of the inventory that you need, which you previously were like, where do I get the money for that? Now you have the money, you can go and order all of that inventory and then ship it out to the backers. And in addition, you're gonna have a profit margin, right? You can use the profit margin that you have accumulated from this campaign to pay for all of the tooling costs that you needed in order to get this e-commerce product out there to the world. So I wouldn't look at it as like, oh, we raised $1 million on Kickstarter, now we can go and deposit that into the bank account and like enjoy sipping margaritas in the Bahamas, right? It's not really that kind of a platform. It's more of you use this money to purchase the inventory, the minimum order quantity, in addition to pay for tooling costs, and in that way you end up ahead, because now not only do you have the funding needed to do this, you also then have media attention, you have a whole social media follower base, you have an email list of customers which you can then send more emails to in the future, announcing new products, announcing sales, creating lookalike audiences on Facebook, right? Doing so much stuff with all these assets that you built up. And here's the kicker. The cool thing is, why I like it is that you can actually speed up the time it takes to announce a new product. Because let's be honest, everyone's a human being. I'm a human being. Most days I feel like a human being. Sometimes I feel like an alien, quite frankly, which is one of the reasons I got this tattoo, right? My octopus tattoo. Sometimes I feel like an alien, but all of us, we're only as good as the timelines, the urgency that we have behind the major goals in our life. And I've watched as some entrepreneurs have, come up with have a really ambitious goal, but they take years to get around to actually executing on it. With a Kickstarter campaign, you gotta get your ducks in a row in a matter of about 3 months. And then you launch, you have a 30-day or 60-day time frame, and everything is compressed. I call it a business boot camp. Everything is compressed into this really finely put timeline and duration, maybe over a course of 5 months, and then you're fulfilling those rewards, right? So think about it. In the course of the next 6 months, what if you could actually have a product out there in the world? Not only that, you have your funding that you need to buy all of the inventory. You have a really high resolution marketing materials in terms of graphics and videos and photos, and you did all the stuff that's a little bit scary, like hiring a photographer, hiring a videographer, hiring a marketing company, right? You've gotten through all that. You've built out and fleshed out the team that you need in order to continue to grow this business. To me, that is why I view Kickstarter and crowdfunding as one of the best avenues for financing your minimum order quantity costs. Now, there are some downsides. One of the downsides is that you gotta be public, right? You gotta be doing this. You might have a public flop. You might not be successful. Same thing might happen if you go the other route. And which is worse? You flopped with your Kickstarter campaign, you have to rethink it and launch again, or you buy all this inventory only to find out that the actual customers don't want the product. And everyone was like, this is such a good idea, man, right? And then all these voices in your head, but then you actually come out with it and no one buys it. That would suck. Like, you're spending thousands of dollars in inventory and tooling costs only to find out that, people don't really want it. Or they said they wanted it, but now they're not really following through. This kind of, to me, mitigates risk. And entrepreneurs, I think in our very nature, we are risk takers, we're risky people, but we don't necessarily like risk. Like, I like a little bit of risk, but I don't wanna risk my whole company. I don't wanna risk, the next 2 years of my life wasted on trying to build a product that doesn't end up, matching with the marketplace at all. I like mitigating risk. I like taking calculated risks, right? I like getting ahead, but also limiting downside. And if that sounds like you, then Kickstarter might be a good fit for you. Same thing with Indiegogo, which is Kickstarter's competitor. So there's a ton of ways in which you can finance your minimum order quantity. It could be bringing in external funding. It could be through debt. It could be by pre-selling. You don't necessarily have to go on Kickstarter. I can share with you how to do it on your own platform. It could be bringing in I think I said bringing investors, using your own 401k, using your own assets and that kind of stuff. there are a lot of ways to finance this, but it really comes down to what are your values? What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish here at the end of the day? And really, when you're going to be working so hard and you know you're going to be over the next 6 months, which avenue, which path makes the most sense for you, your company, your employees, and also maybe your partners? And that's really the question. If you're having trouble, I think, answering that question, you want a little bit more details when it comes to how do you run one of these campaigns, or a little bit more about e-commerce or some of the other options that are out there, you can go and look through some of my YouTube videos that talk about all of this, or you could book a one-on-one coaching call with me, an intensive hour-long session with me personally, and we can go through all of this. You can send me documents in terms of, if you want me to sign an NDA, I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to look through all of the slide presentation that you have, and we can really come to a common understanding of like what would be a good strategy for you going forward. And that's one of the services that I provide. So if that sounds interesting to you, book a one-on-one coaching call with me down below. I also have a great book out there called the Kickstarter Launch Formula, which you can check out in the description of this YouTube video. Give me a thumbs up if you like it. I got some other great stuff in the description in terms of joining my newsletter. I have kickstarterforum.org. Got a lot of great stuff. Go check out Fulfillrite, one of the companies that I work with that sponsors my YouTube videos. Some really cool stuff. But I hope that you enjoyed this video. My name is Salvador Briggman. I do talk fast sometimes because I'm trying to get a lot of content out there, but I hope you liked it, and I will see you next time.